Today just to tell the truth, so hopefully we can get down to the bottom of this. I'm 100%, the charges against me are 100% false, and hopefully due to time, we'll start to see that.
Live, a judge has denied bail for Sean Diddy Combs. Of course, this was the hip-hop mogul's latest bid for freedom as he remains in federal jail for his racketeering and sex trafficking.
It was one of those courtroom moments that could have come straight out of a movie. Christian Combs, the son of one of the most powerful names in music history, suddenly pushed back his chair, his face drained of color, and stormed out of the room. His legal team was left frozen, stunned into silence. This wasn't just a dramatic exit. It was a breaking point, a split-second decision that sent shockwaves through the entire courtroom. The tension in the room had been building for hours, but when the defense attorney casually brought up the allegations about minors being involved in these so-called freak-offs, the air seemed to choke, thickening with disbelief. You could almost hear the collective gasp from the crowd, a ripple of shock spreading through the...
In her civil lawsuit, Cassie said that she was the victim of abuse, assault, and at the hands of Diddy.
Gallery like wildfire. Photographers scrambled, their cameras clicking in rapid succession, capturing the chaos unfolding before their eyes. And just like that, Christian was gone, bolting for the exit, refusing to even glance back. In that one decisive moment, everything changed. The carefully crafted image of innocence and control that Christian had tried so hard to maintain crumbled into dust, leaving nothing but the stark reality of the situation behind. This wasn't just about a single accusation. No, this was something far larger. Something far more disturbing. The allegations leveled against Christian weren't just sensationalized rumors, they were deeply unsettling. They painted a harrowing picture of a luxury yacht that was supposed to be the backdrop for a relaxing family holiday. But, according to the lawsuit, it quickly spiraled into something much darker. Grace Omar, a starlet hired for what she thought would be a professional gig, described an environment that lost all control the moment Christian allegedly stepped foot on board. She claimed he was already in high spirits, pressuring her to join the revelry, constantly pushing drinks her way while others stumbled aimlessly through the yacht's lavish halls. But then came the accusations that stopped everyone in their tracks. Unwanted advances, physical...
This investigation is ongoing, and I encourage anyone with information about this case to come forward and to do it quickly.
Confrontations, and an atmosphere so charged with reckless indulgence that even the most seasoned industry insiders were left utterly speechless. But it wasn't just Grace's chilling account that had the public on edge. The evidence, transcripts, photos, and audio recordings painted a damning picture of a night far from ordinary. Grace's legal team presented bruises as though they were battle scars, tangible proof of an encounter she says left her emotionally shattered and physically rattled. And then there was the audio, allegedly capturing Grace pleading with Christian to stop. Her voice, cracking under the weight of fear and confusion, was nothing short of haunting. These weren't just allegations anymore. No, they were moments, frozen in time, each one threatening to unravel the life of a man who had spent years trying to step out from under the shadow of his father. And then there was the yacht itself, practically a character in this unfolding drama. This wasn't just any vessel. It was a floating fortress of opulence, chartered by none other than the iconic Sean Diddy Combs. The lawsuit claims he had total control over everything aboard: the staff, the guest list, and even the atmosphere. Grace Omar and her legal team argue that what transpired wasn't just a moment of poor judgment, it was a symptom of a much larger culture, a permissive environment allegedly fostered by Diddy himself. Grace's lawyers didn't hold back, accusing the elder Combs of turning a blind eye, if not outright encouraging, the kind of unchecked behavior that led to her harrowing ordeal. Christian's legal team, of course, came out swinging. His attorney, Aaron Dyer, dismissed the claims as baseless, labeling them a cynical attempt to exploit his father's ongoing legal issues. He promised a motion to dismiss, calling the allegations manufactured lies designed to take advantage. of the federal investigations for financial gain. But the damage had already been done. Christian's dramatic walkout, his refusal to engage with the court, only fueled the flames of public speculation. Was this a calculated move to avoid further incrimination? Or was it the impulsive action of someone realizing, in that split second, just how steep the climb ahead was? Could there be other charges tied to this case? "I'm not taking anything off the table," was the reply. The courtroom drama didn't exist in a vacuum. It was part of a larger, more sinister narrative that had been unfolding for years. Sean Combs, once hailed as a visionary mogul who reshaped the music industry, now found himself facing his own legal troubles. From civil suits to federal investigations, the allegations against him painted a grim picture of a man whose empire was not just built on platinum records and groundbreaking marketing, but on a foundation of secrecy, power plays, and, if the lawsuits are to be believed, deeply troubling behavior. Christian's case wasn't just another legal battle. It was another chapter in a saga that seemed to grow darker with every new revelation. A U.S. judge ruled that Diddy will stand trial on federal trafficking and racketeering charges in May. He'll remain in custody until then. Diddy has pleaded not guilty to charges that he used his vast business empire to traffic women and men across state lines for recorded performances. If convicted, he could face a life sentence. But there was something uniquely unsettling about seeing his son, Christian, caught in the crossfire. For years, Christian had tried to forge his own path, releasing music that climbed the charts, launching a sneaker line that sought to distinguish him from his father's towering legacy. But the lawsuit, the photos, the audio recordings, it all tied him back to the very thing he tried so desperately to escape, the shadow of his family's controversial past. Fans who once flooded his social media with praise were now divided. Some rushed to defend him, calling the allegations a smear campaign, while others demanded accountability, their comments steeped in anger and betrayal. The media frenzy was unrelenting. Tabloid headlines screamed about yacht scandals and family secrets, while social media exploded with theories, each more conspiratorial than the last. Every detail of the case was scrutinized, from the timing of the lawsuit to the nature of the evidence. And then there were the whispers, claims that this was just the tip of the iceberg, that more shocking revelations were still to come. The courtroom walkout was replayed endlessly on news channels and viral clips. Each new broadcast added to the pressure, each one stoking the flames of public curiosity. Amid all this, Christian remained silent. He let his legal team do the talking, but silence in the court of public opinion can be deafening. Every unanswered question, every unaddressed rumor only served to fuel the fire. Was his dramatic exit a sign of guilt, as some suggested? Or was it the act of a man pushed to his breaking point, overwhelmed by the weight of accusations that seemed poised to condemn him before he could even defend himself? And then, just when it seemed like the story couldn't get any more tangled, a new twist emerged. Grace's attorney hinted at something far more explosive, a history of these so-called freak-offs, allegedly extending beyond the yacht and involving other members of the Combs family. The accusations were no longer confined to one night or one individual. They pointed to a larger, deeply entrenched culture of recklessness. This was a revelation that sent shockwaves through the courtroom and beyond, leaving everyone to wonder just how deep this story truly went. It's understood that he has a shrink coming by his cell to see him several times a day. A source revealed. And now there's talk about putting him in a bubble, a cell with a plexiglass wall with inmates watching him. Their sole job is to keep an eye on those who are on watch. If the allegations against Christian weren't enough to send the public reeling, the web surrounding his father, Diddy, was unraveling at an alarming pace. The whispers in the courtroom about a deeper history of these so-called freak-offs weren't just idle chatter. They were the gateway to something far darker, a family legacy steeped in indulgence, secrecy, and, if the lawsuits are to be believed, a culture of unchecked exploitation that had persisted for decades. This wasn't just about one man or one moment. It was about an empire built on the edge of chaos, teetering under the weight of its own excesses. For years, Diddy had worn his crown as hip-hop's ultimate mogul, the self-made king who turned street credibility into boardroom dominance. His rise was legendary. From Uptown Records to founding Bad Boy Records, from chart-topping producer to global brand ambassador. But behind the glossy magazine covers and billion-dollar portfolio was a shadow that had followed him for years. The shadow that had long hung over Diddy's empire, once easy to ignore, was now impossible to evade. As federal investigators kicked down doors and lawsuits piled up like unpaid bills, the situation was rapidly spiraling out of control. In the latest development, news broke of the arrest of Sean Diddy Combs. This case has captured the attention of so many. Disgraced and facing federal racketeering, conspiracy, and trafficking charges, the once revered mogul is now at the center of an explosive legal storm. Both the prosecution and defense teams are gearing up for the next phase of action following the indictment, as investigators continue to piece together the web of potential co-conspirators. But how exactly did we arrive at this moment? The accusations against Diddy weren't just shocking. They were disturbingly detailed. The federal indictment painted an almost cinematic picture of a man who allegedly used his vast resources to manipulate those around him. Private jets, luxury yachts, sprawling mansions. These weren't just symbols of success. Prosecutors claimed these were the very stages for orchestrated events where boundaries were blurred, and the lines between personal indulgence and calculated exploitation vanished entirely. The indictment didn't hold back. It suggested that Diddy's empire wasn't just about music and business, it was about control. Control over people, over narratives, and most chillingly, control over the truth. But perhaps the most devastating aspect? The implication that his own children, including Christian, weren't just passive bystanders in this sprawling drama. The lawsuits didn't only target Diddy, they implicated his sons, accusing them of being willing participants who helped perpetuate the very culture now under intense scrutiny. It wasn't just Christian's alleged behavior aboard that yacht. In 2022, it was the disturbing suggestion that this was part of a broader pattern, a family system where power and privilege shielded actions that would destroy anyone else's reputation. These individuals allegedly included high-ranking business supervisors, personal assistants, security staff, and household employees. While Christian's dramatic courtroom exit remained fresh in the public's memory, Diddy was embroiled in his own battle in a far grimmer setting, the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn. This stark environment was a far cry from the penthouses and private islands he once called home. His legal team worked tirelessly for his release, painting him as a misunderstood figure, unfairly targeted due to his success. Yet the evidence against him seemed to grow by the hour. Seized electronics, reportedly filled with terabytes of data, emails, videos, and audio files, allegedly chronicled years of misconduct. And then there were the weapons, the cash, the endless supply of materials prosecutors argued painted a damning portrait of a man who had once believed he was untouchable. The media, of course, was reveling in every new detail, each more sensational than the last. Every broadcast, every viral clip, only added to the growing sense that this wasn't just another celebrity scandal. It was part of a much larger narrative about power, influence, and the darker corners of an industry built more on image than on accountability. Now, this is significant, especially considering who we associate Diddy with and everything we've seen him do over the decades, said one insider. From mansions to jail cells, it's a stark contrast that really underscores the weight of what he's facing. As the investigations deepened, former employees began speaking out, at first anonymously, but later with increasing candor. One source who had worked closely with Diddy during the early 2000s described a man who thrived on control. He didn't just want to win, The source said. He wanted to own the game. And if you were in his orbit, you played by his rules, or you didn't play at all. For all his power and influence, cracks had begun to show in Diddy's carefully curated image. From his infamous feud with Suge Knight during the East Coast-West Coast rivalry to the whispered allegations surrounding his connections to the unsolved deaths of two of hip-hop's biggest icons, Diddy had always managed to stay one step ahead of the fallout. But this time felt different. The sheer volume of accusations, combined with the weight of federal scrutiny, made it clear this wouldn't be another chapter he could close with a high-profile settlement or a well-timed press release. And just when it seemed the story couldn't get any darker, a bombshell surfaced, an alleged connection to the 1996 assassination of Tupac Shakur, a case that had remained cold for decades. The arrest of Dwayne "Keith D. Davis, who claimed to have first-hand knowledge of the events surrounding Shakur's final moments, reignited speculation about Diddy's possible involvement. Davis had long alleged that Diddy had offered him a significant sum to have both Shakur and Suge Knight eliminated, a claim dismissed as mere rumor until now. With Davis reportedly cooperating with investigators, the possibility that Diddy's legal troubles could stretch back nearly 30 years added a whole new level of complexity to an already tangled web. The East Coast-West Coast rivalry wasn't just a feud. It was a cultural battleground that defined an era. Loyalty to your coast was sacred, as if sealed by a blood oath. On one side, Diddy, then known as Puff Daddy, represented the gritty hustle of New York City with his Bad Boy Records empire. On the other, Suge Knight and Death Row Records stood as the crown jewel of the West Coast. The clash between these two moguls wasn't just about music, it was about power, control, and the very soul of the hip-hop world. The rivalry between the East and West Coast was more than just a clash of egos. It was a cultural battlefield with the sun-soaked streets of Los Angeles as its backdrop. At first, it appeared to be nothing more than a marketing ploy, a way to generate buzz and sell records. But things quickly escalated, fueled by wounded pride, diss tracks, and eventually, violence. What began as lyrical jabs soon morphed into real-life threats, and the competition became something far more dangerous, almost cinematic in its intensity. "I don't want to be involved in that stuff," where it's negative, someone from the scene once confessed, reflecting the chaotic vibe that permeated the industry. At the center of it all were two of the most influential figures in hip-hop, Tupac, Shakur, and Christopher Wallace, better known as Biggie Smalls. Once friends, Shakur and Biggie became bitter rivals after a 1994 incident at Quad Studios in Manhattan. Shakur was ambushed in a robbery, and he believed the attack was orchestrated by people from Biggie's camp, a suspicion that would haunt him and fuel an escalating series of diss tracks and public insults. The feud, which started as a clash between two of the genre's biggest stars, quickly drew the entire industry into its toxic orbit. Diddy, Biggie's mentor and protector, emerged as the key figure in the East Coast camp, while Suge Knight, with his imposing presence, cast an equally dark shadow over the West. The rivalry wasn't just personal, it became a symbol of regional pride, a battle between coasts, with each side digging in deeper as the stakes grew higher. By 1996, the feud had reached a boiling point, and the lines between business, competition, and personal vendettas became completely blurred. Shakur's signing with Death Row Records turned him into the ultimate weapon in Suge Knight's arsenal. A mouthpiece for the West Coast's disdain for the East, songs like Hit 'Em Up were more than insults. They were declarations of war. Meanwhile, Biggie's responses rallied fans around Bad Boy Records, with Diddy strategically positioning his label as the untouchable force within the industry. But with every diss track and public jab, the invisible line separating entertainment from real-world violence became increasingly thin, setting the stage for the tragedies that would soon follow. With all due respect to Puffy, you gotta realize one thing: he didn't start off like that. "I'm sure somebody taught him that," said one industry veteran, reflecting on Diddy's rise and the culture that may have shaped him. Yet, even as these connections surfaced, Diddy's legal team continued to fight tooth and nail, arguing that the charges against him were exaggerated, nothing more than opportunistic lawsuits and overzealous prosecutors. But behind closed doors, the weight of his mistakes became undeniable. If convicted, Diddy faced the very real possibility of spending the rest of his life behind bars. The fall from grace was dramatic, especially for a man who once seemed invincible. For Christian, the ripple effects of his father's legal battles were impossible to ignore. While his own case was separate in the legal sense, it was inextricably linked to the broader narrative surrounding the Combs family. Every new allegation, every piece of evidence against Diddy cast a longer shadow over Christian's attempts to defend himself. The public wasn't just questioning his actions on that yacht, they were questioning the very environment he was raised in, the values instilled in him, and his role in the empire his father had built. The tension was palpable, not just in the courtroom, but in the court of public opinion. Fans and critics alike were grappling with the same question: how much of this was the product of individual choices, and how much of it was the inevitable result of a system that prioritized power? Above all else, as the investigations deepened, it became clear that this wasn't just a story about one family's fall from grace. It was a story about the lengths people will go to protect their image, their legacy, and their secrets. But here's the thing about secrets: they don't stay buried forever. As more voices came forward, more evidence was uncovered, and more connections were made, it became increasingly difficult to ignore the growing sense that this was only the beginning. What else was hidden behind the walls of Diddy's empire? How far would the fallout spread before the full truth came to light? Let us know what you think about this tangled web of controversy. Are we witnessing the unraveling of an untouchable legacy, or is this just another example of the media blowing things out of proportion? Drop your thoughts in the comments and we'll catch you in the next one, where we'll dig even deeper into the story everyone's talking about.